Hello, this is Storm Warden coming back at you today with another video update. And today we're going to talk about Invest 97L, which is formed in the Caribbean. And we're going to talk about the potential for a nasty system to really develop with this. We could be potentially looking at a dangerous situation later on this week. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to go through all the model guidance. We're going to go through all the factors that are allowing this to develop. And then I'll briefly mention something that could maybe cap intensity a little bit. But overall, guys, this system has a very, very high ceiling. I mean, we're looking at a pretty dangerous scenario with this system. So, probably one of the more dangerous scenarios that we've seen this season. So, if you've been liking my weather content, please subscribe as I will continue to bring you daily weather updates. And without further ado, guys, we're just going to get right into it because we have a lot to talk about today. This is Invest 97L. Now, there's been some westerly shear that's kind of tainted its I want to say western side of the system. We had a tropical storm form in the eastern Pacific, and so that is imparting some westerly shear, and that could be a caveat. We got a system that has formed in eastern Pacific. What that's going to do is impart some westerly shear, but what it also may do is help this system to push even further east than what models are saying right now. So there's a lot going into this system. There's still some questions, some uncertainties, but the general model theme has been that we're going to look at a significant hurricane for the western Florida coast and maybe even the panhandle of Florida. So we're looking at a really dangerous situation with this system, and we could be looking at a really bad situation later on this week. Now, we're going to get right into it because models have been outrageous over the last few hours, and I didn't even want to show the hurricane models because without that low level circulation, hurricane models typically don't do all that well. Um, and also, I don't know if they're initializing properly because this system that now circuit here on the screen, this system over that's forming the Pacific, it is imparting some westerly shear. So I don't know if hurricane models are taking that into consideration. Um, I was definitely debating that I want to show you guys the hurricane models, but I just decided not to. I think I'm gonna wait a little bit longer to see how they trend over the next day or so before I show you those hurricane models, because the hurricane models are absolutely insane. I don't know if I've ever seen hurricane models this aggressive in a really long time. It might be my first time, honestly, that I've seen hurricane models this aggressive. Honestly, now we're gonna start by looking at the GFS model, and models are still having to correct eastward. I forgot to tell you, but this system is much further east than what models have it. And in my opinion, I think these eastern trends will continue. But we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get deeper into the video as I talk about what's steering this system and where I think this may go. Now, looking at our system now, I want you to keep your eye on this area right down here. GFS wants to have this at a almost a hurricane. It actually does have a pretty strong hurricane coming out of the Caribbean by Wednesday morning, and then it just bottoms them out to like a strong cat 3 headed towards cat 4 status of a hurricane, headed right towards the I want to say right around the Big Bend area of Florida. This is a highly impactful scenario, and guys, I think it's pretty set now. Regardless of what happens, regardless of the intensity, storm surge is going to be really, really, really impactful with this system. This is going to be a large system covering many areas. So whenever you get a system this large, this magnitude, you're going to get a huge storm surge and probably really dangerous storm surge. This system looks like a complete monster, and the GFS only confirms that idea even more. So it gets it down to 942, which is strong Cat 3, probably headed towards Cat 4 status by this point in time. And then it moves it right up the southeast, just bringing states under multiple high impact severe weather. So this system looks bad. I mean, that's the only way to really put this. This system looks pretty bad, and models are still having to correct further east. So again, it's possible that this system could get far enough east where it even tips the part of Cuba, and then it moves towards the western Florida coast. So the GFS model is one of those worst case scenario models, and generally most models have been trending in that direction. Now here's our European model run, and we're going through time, and it strengthens our system not nearly as quickly as GFS, but it still does, and it gets it down to strong Cat 1, headed towards Cat 2 status on Hurricane. Now, granted, when it comes to European model, it has a very weak bias, so I would not probably wouldn't take that into consideration. But again, even if our system was to cap off at intensity like this is still going to be an impactful storm because of how large it is. Storm surge is still going to be significant. Wind inland prospects will still be significant. So, I mean, regardless of the situation, this system looks like it's going to cause lots of problems across the southeast, particularly that western Florida coast. Though you guys are really in a dangerous path, but I will talk about you guys a little bit later. But up there in the upper southeast, Georgia, South Carolina, especially Georgia, South Carolina, especially in Western Carolinas, we could be looking at a pretty bad situation unfolding here as well. So again, I'm not here to scare anybody, but this system looks pretty bad. And based off what I've seen, based off my gut feeling, this is probably gonna be one of the bigger systems we've seen in a while. Now, looking at the Canadian model, it too strengthened this to a pretty fairly strong Cat 2 hurricane, and then it pushes this north into the southeast. So this is also another impactful scenario. If we look back, I want to show you this. I'm going to move this forward. Look at this eastern trend off the Canadian model. 1, 2, 3. I mean, almost 4-run trend pushing east, and I expect that to continue. These eastern trends are probably not going to stop. And now that we have Tropical Storm John in the Pacific, this is going to throw a really big wrench in this forecast because this could push even further east. So we'll have to see how that interacts. Now, here's the latest icon model, and we get a system that develops as it moves out of the Caribbean, and then it pushes into the very far eastern Florida panhandle towards the Big Bend area, and then it pushes that as a fairly strong Cat 2 headed towards down to Cat 3 hurricane by Thursday going into Friday. So all the models are showing impactful scenarios. And again, I'm going to make this aware. Maybe we do have some caveats like that westerly shear that may impart this storm, may keep that low level circulation much more disorganized. Regardless of the situation, though, if you only get a Cat 1 hurricane, because of its size and the large magnitude of this system, we're still looking at an impactful scenario. So regardless of the situation, if you're along that Florida coast, this storm is going to be a bad one. So that's just, I think that most people would agree on that. As just the models are showing a really large system. So regardless of the situation, you should be preparing on the western Florida coast because this system looks really, really bad. And again, we'll look here at the steering currents. Now, what's steering our system? Well, there's a couple things. Now that we have John over here in the Pacific, that's also another key factor. But you also have your trough located somewhere up in here. These two things are going to help steer this system probably further east, in my opinion. I've been sticking to my guns with that. That's my forecast. That this probably ends up verifying much further east than forecasted. But we'll see over the next few days. But I'm actually gonna go through this, and then I want you to watch that. I want you to watch John in Pacific, and then I want you to watch the trough to the northwest. This is all gonna play a huge role in where our system goes. Here's our upper level low. Now notice how I'm going to take you on the trend of the GFS model. Now this was a couple model runs back. I'm going to push this forward. You see that eastward trend? Watch this little area right down here. You see this eastern trend in the model? That is indicating that, number one, this trough is probably moving faster. It's also probably taking into consideration John and Pacific, which is imparting that westerly shear, which may, one, help that center relocation form much further east, and then two, that trough that's pushing that much further east, it also may act as a shield from it getting so far west, kind of like Debbie. So where models had that a little bit further west, but it ended up verifying further east because the trough was coming in quicker. So, in my opinion, Eastern trends are not done. There's, in my opinion, there's still a decent, fair amount of questions, because now that you have John and Pacific, we gotta say, how damaging could the westerly shear be to this system? That is a question. But generally speaking, regardless, whether this is a Cat 1 or anything higher, this is going to be an impactful system for those areas. So now we look at upper level wind pattern going ahead into this system, and we're pushing forward. And that's a favorable trough interaction right there. I mean, it doesn't get any more favorable than that. You have no shear, no dry air, high ocean heat content. I mean, there's so many things that's going for this system that I really don't see what's stopping this. The only caveat that I see in the short term is John, which may impart some westerly shear over 97L. Even if this storm's intensity capped off a little bit, this still gonna be a significant system. It still is. So, and then I want to show you our ocean waters, and this only further confirms what I was saying, that this system has a lot going for it, and then there's like hardly any dry air in the Gulf of Mexico, especially once the system really gets going and it forms that moisture bubble. So overall, guys, model guidance is not looking good for this system. We're looking at a pretty bad situation for those on the Eastern Gulf, particularly in the Florida West Coast. You guys are really under the gun for a really, really nasty system later on this week. And I'm telling you right now, I didn't want to show them, but the hurricane models are absolutely outrageous. I'm talking nearly every hurricane model that I looked at this morning is showing a Cat 4 hurricane hitting somewhere along that eastern panhandle of Florida. Not saying that's going to happen, but again, it just goes to show that this system has a very high ceiling. There's always going to be caveats when it comes to weather, and that caveat could be John. John may be the saving grace, but I wouldn't depend on that. Especially since this system, if it keeps pushing further east, it may actually be able to form a low of circulation a little bit quicker. And it may actually be able to protect itself from that westerly shear. But again, we'll see. So, but that's all I got. I'm not gonna over talk. I just want to get on here and show you the model guidance and update you on this. I don't want to talk in circles, but this is our system. I mean, if you're on that Florida West Coast, you need to be preparing. Before I get out here, I want to give you guys my forecast for this system, which I actually had this landfall in Cedar Key, Florida. So that's my early forecast pinpoint. I think this will end up verifying further east. But as you get deeper, if you're in the upper southeast, I want to say Georgia, South Carolina, even in the North Carolina area, particularly Western Carolinas, at least for now, that's where the areas are. You're looking at some really significant impacts later on this week. I'm talking damaging wind gusts, heavy rainfall, probably widespread power outages later on as we get into the week. There's still some questions, so I'm going to fine tune that forecast. But if you're in the upper southeast, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, you could be looking at a dangerous situation later on this week as well. So that's all I got. We're looking at a pretty significant system later on this week. Probably could peak as high as Cat 4, could be as low as Cat 1, but most models are trending in the wrong direction with this system.